call-in line at 405-329-9000 or text the show on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line at 405-651-3439.
Do it! Just do it!
Now, with Locked In, here's Parker Thune and Grayson Singleton.
Well, here we go again. Wednesday, here on the Ref, Locked In, kicking off. Be with you for the next hour. Parker Thune alongside Grayson Singleton. The show brought to you today and every day by Dorsey Jones Buick GMC out in El Reno. Fantastic service advisors, fantastic sales staff, great prices, half-price oil changes on Saturdays. Dorsey Jones Buick GMC in El Reno is the place to head if you're in search of a new vehicle or just need service for your current vehicle. G-Baby? G-Freaky?
Good Lord.
How we doing?
What's up, man? How's everything? I'm good.
Great. Can't complain. 405-651-3439 is the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line.
We need a nickname for you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've never really had one. I mean, people will call me PT, especially people in the industry, which, you know, it makes sense, I guess. I've never had, like, a real catchy nickname that isn't my initials. So, yeah, if you want to workshop that, by all means. I want to get started today, and there's a lot of various topics that we have to discuss over the course of the next hour. But I want to start with a very simple question that we probably should have asked at this point because it's been in the news cycle for at least, 3 or 4 weeks? Are you attending the Crimson Combine? That's what I want to ask to the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line. Very simple. Yes, no question. There aren't a lot of those that we ask on the radio that make for good radio, but I think this one does. Do you plan to attend the Crimson Combine? If so, why or why not? We got talking about the Crimson Combine a little bit during Steely and I's show, but, you know, we heard from Mike Gundy earlier talking about how he'd love to get OU and Oklahoma State playing a scrimmage every spring, a spring exhibition, which is something that Colorado and Syracuse are not only actively exploring, Grayson, but it's like in the final stages of approval. Like it looks like it's going to happen as long as the NCAA says yes to it, which it would be very on brand for the NCAA to say no to that for whatever reasons they want to try and contrive. But I think it's an awesome idea. I think it's great that we're ostensibly not far off from seeing what it actually looks like between Colorado and Syracuse. And it's my hope that the Crimson Combine is a one-off event, that this does not become an annual tradition, because I just think it's a lot harder to, well, I guess I should say it's probably going to be more difficult long-term to get people up for an event like the Crimson Combine. Because, you know, for a year, sure, it'll be cool. It'll drive some interest. It'll drive some intrigue. People want to be part of something new like that and probably get a good, solid turnout. But in year 2 and beyond, especially for those people that have already seen it, there's not necessarily going to be that same level of public interest, I don't think. Because if you're talking about a spring game, there's always going to be public interest in a spring game because everybody wants to see the new guys. They want to see the true freshmen, early enrollees. They want to see the transfers. Obviously, in years past, in recent years at Oklahoma, there's always been a very prominent transfer quarterback in the mix. Well, not always, but most years, whether that be Jalen Hurts or Dylan Gabriel, or you even go back to Murray and Mayfield, right? So there's always going to be heavy public interest in the spring game. Is there going to be that type of sustained public interest in the Crimson Combine? I don't think there is, Grayson.
I think the only way you can build sustained interest in a Crimson Combine hinges upon what sort of player-to-fan interaction that you're going to be able to generate. I think that's the only way that this can be successful year over year. I think there's interest in it for this year because we just found out a month ago that we're not going to have the spring game. and people have already kind of made their plans to be here. So it's like, you know what? Screw it, may as well. But year over year, you're going to have to get the players engaging with the fans at a pretty personal level if you're going to keep generating interest in that. I'm back and forth on this. I've been back and forth on this since I heard it thrown out last night by Mike Gundy with OU and OSU playing a spring game. I kind of like it. I do kind of like it. Here's the thing, though. Here was my first thought. Because it's OU and OSU playing this spring game, and I heard the Mike Gundy clip that you and Steely played, and how Gundy said, yeah, we can do 7-on-7 and stuff and whatnot, but we're also concerned about injuries. How long until this turns into something where you got to be concerned about injuries? Because this isn't like two teams from very different coasts, as is the case with Colorado and Syracuse. This is in-state rivalry that not only is you're bringing it to a training camp-ish kind of environment, but we don't even have the Bedlam game anymore. This is their only chance to get their shots on each other. So how long till it becomes too much of a real football game to where the coaches are like, oh boy, this could be a problem? And again, you're coming off an OU season where injuries were the main culprit in why OU kind of capsized last year. So I think it's a really cool idea. I would be all down for it. I would go to it. But I wonder how long it is until we say, oops, this has kind of ballooned into more than what we bargained for.
Quick aside, there's some very interesting wardrobe happening on the NBA today on ESPN. Malika Andrews is wearing a suit and tie, which is interesting. And Carlos Boozer is wearing a turtleneck and a sport coat, which is also very interesting.
You don't like the turtleneck and sport coat thing?
It's not that I don't like it.
Because that's how I like to wear suits.
Really? With
Yes.
turtlenecks?
Yes, I like the turtleneck, and I like the turtle. It's easier to accessorize.
Man, when was the last time I wore a turtleneck? Probably high school. I don't know if I own a turtleneck right now.
I own like 5.
So you're a turtleneck guy.
I like the turtle. I don't just wear turtlenecks out everywhere, but
Are you
I like
a turtleneck and chain guy?
Absolutely.
A little Lonely Island reference. But no, I guess my response to that would be, and a very common response to that would be, well, at least in OU's case, dudes are getting injured left and right during spring ball anyway. So is there really much of a leg to stand on there if you want to label it a precautionary measure, not playing a game like that? Because injuries happen. They're part of football. At Oklahoma, the last few years, really ever since Brent Venables got to town, man, this team practices hard. And unfortunately, there have been casualties as a consequence of that. The team did not practice hard under Lincoln Riley. They did not even tackle in practice. That was the Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch regime. And that was fine in the Big 12, I guess, fleet the opposition. But, of course, when you get down to postseason play, and it's time to square off with the big boys, the teams that have been adequately prepared on the practice field for the physicality of postseason football, and Oklahoma got their teeth kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
Year in, year out in the postseason. And so I think there's been an understanding ever since Venables and his staff got to town that we need to go harder. We need to take this more seriously in terms of the physicality that we observe during our practices if we're going to be prepared for the week in, week out grind of SEC play come the season. Even so, there's a balance you have to strike there because you can't wear the team out. And I think what you saw in 2022 in particular, and you certainly saw elements of it this past season as well, Oklahoma was just worn out the back half of that 2022 campaign. You saw it. They started to very visibly drag. They, as a team, were not themselves. They did not have the same level of stamina. They did not have the same level of speed in an overall sense that they had early in the season. And that resulted in a lot of lost football games. So in 2025, I mean, I guess we'll see how much of an aberration 2024 actually was. I think it's hard to look at all of those injuries that occurred for Oklahoma last season and not conclude that, okay, that's not really replicable. That's probably never going to happen again, at least not to that extent. But we'll see. Again, another reason I think the Crimson Combine makes sense for this year. There are a lot of reasons why the Crimson Combine makes sense for this year.
Yeah.
But I also think it's perfectly justifiable that you would look at the Crimson Combine as something that, while it may make sense for this year and the current circumstance, hopefully it isn't something that's becoming an annual tradition, because it has less moxie than the spring game.
1,000% agree. I also think this is a really good text on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line, 651-3439. Kyle from Salisaw, I'm all for scheduling a spring game against another school, but if the reasoning for no spring game was injury concern, it seems hypocritical and counterproductive to actually get back healthy and stay healthy. Thoughts? My thought is I'll add another layer to that. Part of the reason we don't want spring games, and Mike Gundy said it, is because you might be showcasing talent that could potentially get purged. And finally, a coach said that as well, not just us speculating that. Here's why that can add even more hypocrisy to this situation. You mean to tell me that OU and OSU could potentially play a spring game and you don't want it televised? I'm telling you right now, ESPN will come to OU and OSU, cut them a $2 million check, and say, put this on TV. And I am 95% sure both schools would agree to that, because that decision is made higher than Brent Venables and Mike Gundy.
And shoot, man, that revenue will offset any unnecessary exposure that happens for any of your student athletes that you're worried about getting poached.
Absolutely.
Like, if some other school watches, shoot, I don't know, let's say Cortland Guillory is a very recent example of a guy that is the recipient of a lot of positive buzz at Oklahoma throughout spring practice. Let's say a guy like that goes out and dominates during the spring game, and like an Arizona State comes along and says, we'll pay you $200,000 more. Oklahoma can come back around with that recently cashed check from their televised spring game and say, nope, we got you covered. You're going to stay.
Institutions have never turned down additional money. And I guarantee you, look.
And they never will.
And they never will. Look, if you want to keep this stuff off television, like, I get that. Go play somebody else. Like, Colorado and Syracuse might be televised because it's the first. And also, Dion. But if you think Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are going to play a spring game in an era where we don't have a scheduled Bedlam anymore, and you think some television network is not going to jump on that, you are utterly mistaken.
Nick in Sepulpa is about to beef with you over fashion choices on the text line. He said, I haven't worn a turtleneck since I was like 5. Come on, guys. The only adults that should wear a turtleneck are priests and women.
Have you not seen people wearing turtlenecks under suits? Now, again, I don't wear turtlenecks just by themselves. I don't even wear them without having a jacket over, like a sport coat over it. But if you're telling me that a turtleneck suit, like the ones Ryan Clark wears on ESPN, aren't fashionable in the year 2025, I got some questions about your fashion, homie.
On the topic of football, John from Tulsa says, if we start playing OSU in the spring, regular Bedlam is officially dead and won't make a return for a long time unless realignment happens.
Maybe so.
I mean, be that as it may, you're looking at a situation where best case scenario, you're not going to see a Bedlam matchup for another decade?
Probably.
I think the next opportune juncture on the calendar for Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to play in non-con is like 2034.
Yeah, because Oklahoma State has their non-con scheduled out for a while.
Exactly. So you're looking at a long Bedlam hiatus any way you slice it. And if that's what it's going to be, if it's going to be one or two Bedlam, like let's say you get a home and home on the schedule once a decade. At that point, I would rather just see those two teams play every spring as opposed to twice a decade. That's just me. You're not obligated to agree. But it resurrects Bedlam in some sense. It preserves the sense of unity is the wrong word, but the sense of rivalry, frankly, between those two institutions. Because
I'll give you unity. What galvanizes the state more than that? Bedlam was the biggest party in the state of Oklahoma. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know that I would categorize it as a party, but
You know what I mean.
yeah, like it's unique in the fact that it is a rivalry exclusive to the state of Oklahoma.
Yes.
Which, naturally, you're only talking about 2 Power 4 football institutions in the entire state. There's no other matchup. There's no other series that can be regarded in that same light. So, yeah, I'm in favor of a Bedlam every spring if they can work that out. And my thought on it is this, going back to the injury conversation, when was the last time we saw an OU player getting injured in the spring game? When was the last time the spring game resulted in an injury of any substantial severity beyond just guys cramping? Bauer Sharp got his bell rung last year by Michael Boganowski.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, people are like, I should have rung it a little harder. But outside of stuff like that, the usual, when was the last time we saw somebody get seriously injured in Oklahoma's spring game? It hasn't typically happened.
But that's been because you've been playing against each other.
Uh-huh.
If you bring another team in there, which, look, I'm not saying that opens you up to, cheap shots, but the other team doesn't have any respect for your long-term safety.
That may be true. But even so, you even just take a look at any matchup that happens during the football season. How many injuries do you see per game that are of actual severity? Not just guys getting walked off the field, stretched out on the sidelines. Like, it might happen once, maybe twice.
Two, 3 max.
Yeah. So, I'm not really worried about an epidemic of injuries resulting from a spring exhibition. I'm not. Again, you're not obligated to agree, but that's not how I see it. Frisco Sooner says, are we going to have to call Caleb Williams to see whether or not Grayson has committed a fashion faux pas? We'll get on the horn with Caleb during the break, I suppose.
That's hilarious.
If you take him as the authority on all things fashion. He of the painted nails. I'm not sure. Not sure what he would think of the turtleneck under the sport coat. That probably would be a Caleb Williams thing. I could see Caleb rocking that turtleneck sport coat.
A lot of athletes do that these days.
405-651-3439 is the Knibbel Meyer Chevrolet text line. Coming back from the break, on the other side, more of your texts, more OU football and recruiting talk. You are listening to The Ref, the home of Sooner fans. Keep it right here.
Bleed Crimson? Love great Sooner talk? Join the Ref Army by downloading our free app. Toby and TJ, Plank and Josh, Steelman and Thune, and Teddy and Tyler. We have the Sooner experts. The Ref is home to Sooner fans worldwide.
For the professional, it's not enough to just possess knowledge. That's why at GMC, we seek to refine it, to wield its power, to redefine its boundaries, while pushing the limits. And we put this knowledge to the test in every GMC Sierra by engineering each one to outperform your expectations. So you know you're getting precision and durability when you need it most. And that's what makes the GMC Sierra the truck worth knowing. We are professional grade. See your Oklahoma GMC dealers.
As Oklahoma grows, we want to grow with it, and serving part-time in the Oklahoma Army National Guard is perfect for that. Our service provides money for school, so we can be ready for a new career or improve our current one. We learn valuable teamwork skills and get hands-on with some of the latest tech. And we also help the communities we live in recover whenever they are in need. Our service is helping to keep Oklahoma and ourselves moving forward. Learn more at nationalguard.com/OK.
Sponsored by the Oklahoma Army National Guard. Aired by the Oklahoma Association of Broadcasters and this station.
That twinge in your knee isn't going to wait until Monday, and neither do we. At Orthostat, we've expanded, so you get better hours, better facilities, and the same great care. Open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Whether it's sprains, strains, fractures, or joint pain, from knuckles to knees and every joint in between, our same-day, affordable care gets you back to life faster. Visit OuchOrthostat.com to learn more.
Do you love sports and looking for a way to stay active? What's up? It's Grayson Singleton, and the fastest growing sport in America has a new home here in Norman. Hey Pickle Pickle is now open with 5 state-of-the-art indoor courts. Hey Pickle Pickle is perfect for you regardless of your level of experience. With food to keep you fueled up while you play, you can also book your courts online today at heypicklefun.com or visit them in person, located just west of Hayday off of Indian Hills in Norman. Hey Pickle Pickle is open each day, 7 days a week at 9 a.m., where fun meets fitness.
Are you, your family, or company looking for a locally owned and trusted management group? Carlsbad Management Group is an owner, developer, and manager of high-quality apartment communities in Oklahoma. They are a locally owned and operated management company for apartments and self-storage units. They are committed to providing exceptional apartment homes, customer service, and increasing the value of multi-family communities under our management. If you would like a free management quote today, call Carlsbad Management at 405-701-1411 and be part of the Carlsbad family.
Speaking of technology, did you know that RK Black is an authorized dealer for Kyocera copiers? And the Kyocera copiers aren't just copiers. They're smart devices that can scan, print, fax, and email your documents with ease and security. Even better, they're backed by RK Black's award-winning service team that is built on nearly 70 years of taking great care of our clients. Whether you need a desktop printer or a multifunction copier, RK Black has the right product for you. Let's get the conversation started. Give us a call at 943-9800 or visit us at rkblack.com.
People are always looking to invest in a good opportunity. So what if you could invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change, called Better Futures. With your investment, it helps students like me go to college. My name is Charles, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
No matter where you live, you care about one thing during bad weather: keeping your family and property safe. Scissortail Roofing and Construction is here to ensure just that. Whether it's damage from strong winds or a hailstorm, we will manage your residential or commercial project from start to finish. Call us today, 405-928-8089, or visit us online at scissortailroofing.com for a free estimate. Call Scissortail today, your trusted local roofing and construction company.
Where were you 8 years ago today?
8 years ago today, I would have been 15. So it's a really, really good question. I was probably playing an AAU tournament.
I'll tell you where I was 8 years ago today. And I know where many of you were 8 years ago today. Sitting in front of a television screen, transfixed at the greatness of Buddy Hield.
That was 8 years ago.
8 years ago today, Buddy Hield dropped 37 on Oregon in the West Regional Final of the 2016 NCAA tournament to send Oklahoma to the Final Four. I was convinced, Grayson. I was convinced after that sensational performance and the tournament he'd had up until that point, I was convinced that team was going all the way. I was convinced that was the team that was going to break through and finally bring a national championship to Norman, Oklahoma in the sport of basketball. The Sooners have never won one in men's or women's hoops. And obviously at the time had never won one in men's or women's hoops. And then, of course, we know what happened in the Final Four. They get matched up with a Villanova team that they beat by 25 earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Villanova hit everything that day. Oklahoma hit nothing, and Villanova hit everything. I don't remember what the final score was. I don't want to remember what the final score was. It was a very, very lopsided basketball game. Villanova, of course, went on to win the national championship on the shot at the buzzer from Chris Jenkins. Oh, buddy, what a time that was. Thanks for all you did in the Crimson and Cream. It was a legendary run. Parker Thune, Grayson Singleton here with you on Locked In. Hit us up on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line at 405-651-3439. A 918 listener has pointed out that I am incapable of doing basic math. 2016 was 9 years ago. in my head, it's 2024. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm stuck in 2024. But you're right. It is 2025. That was 9 years ago. I am an idiot. This is why I stopped doing math. This is why I got a college degree in a program that did not require me to take any math courses. I was out on math after my senior year of high school. Patrick says on the text line, did you see this in Dallas? Naked woman went nuts running through the airport. If there's a video attached, Patrick, I don't want to see it. No, I did not see that. Would rather not. Let's talk some OU football.
Supposedly she bit somebody.
What in the world? The world is full of psychos. It truly is full of psychos. There are crazy people everywhere. And I would say, I don't know if it's a great thing or an unfortunate thing. I'm not convinced there are more crazy people than there have ever been before in the universe. But the reality of the social media era and the smartphone era is that whenever there is a crazy person doing crazy stuff out in public, it makes the internet.
Which has probably emboldened some people.
Hey, you pretty excited for this afternoon?
What are you referring to?
I'm referring to your alma mater picking up a commitment from Jenks' own Caden Jones.
You always trying to get me on the wrong side of the feelings of the listeners, man. You always setting me up for stuff like this.
No, it's coming down the hatch at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Caden Jones going to make his commitment announcement at Jenks High School. It is expected that he is going to choose Oklahoma State. I guess none of us know for sure until he picks up the hat or unzips the jacket or whatever it is he's doing to reveal his commitment. But the expectation is that he's going to choose Oklahoma State. And so, as we look at the list of the top 2026 prospects in the state of Oklahoma, as of right now, Caden Jones is the number 5 player within state lines. Now, this list does not yet factor in Jaden O'Neal. When the next rankings update comes out, he will be officially reclassified as an Oklahoma prospect as opposed to a California one. And he will, in all likelihood, be the number 1 player in the state of Oklahoma at that time. But as it stands, the top 5 players, Landon Anderson, the defensive lineman from Edmond Santa Fe. You got Bixby linebacker Trey McLaughlin. And then you got, of course, Caden Jones. So it is altogether a possibility that 2 hours from now, Oklahoma State will hold commitments from 2 of the top 5 players within state lines in the 2026 class. It's been a little while since something like that happened.
It has.
Now, rankings are obviously subject to change. But Trey McLaughlin, Caden Jones, both excellent players worthy of the blue chip distinction.
And look, when it comes to Oklahoma State, it is undeniable that school has a lineage at the running back position. It's been well chronicled. There's 2 of them in the Hall of Fame, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas. And the scheme that Mike Gundy runs as an offense is very conducive to that. And right now, you're juxtaposing that to a situation at Oklahoma where your running back room is a little bit shaky and your coach is a little bit strange with how he with how he deploys them.
So, coach is a little bit strange.
Well, okay, there were 3 more words at the end of that sentence. Okay, I don't know DeMarco personally, but yeah, right now it is a reasonable thought that Oklahoma State would be more conducive to a running back of Caden Jones' ilk.
Especially if you want to be a feature back, right?
Yes, especially if you want to be a feature back within your first 2 years, too.
Historically speaking, DeMarco Murray has operated via committee. Now, the Sooners have had some bell cow backs in the past, but those guys, even when they have been getting the majority of the carries, very rarely have they been getting like 75-80% of the carries. I think the heaviest workloads that I can recall for running backs during DeMarco Murray's tenure on staff, well, you go back to 2022 with Eric Gray. Eric Gray felt like got the lion's share of the carry. I mean, number 2 on the depth chart was Javonte Barnes, a true freshman, and he got some decent run, but that was the closest thing to a true RB1 that Oklahoma has had in the time that DeMarco Murray has been on staff. Now, as we look at take another look at prospects within the state of Oklahoma for the class of 2026, we've talked about some of our favorite under-the-radar prospects from within state lines. Guys like Daniel McMorris, the offensive tackle from Norman North. Braden Presley out in Bixby that Oklahoma has offered at the safety position. Xavier Okwufulueze, whom I really want Oklahoma to offer just to see all of Steely's YouTube yahoos, just to see how they will try and pronounce Xavier Okwufulueze's name. Because Lord knows we got a lot of yahoos that try and talk OU recruiting on YouTube. I'd be very interested to see how they navigate that one. Yeah, Oklahoma just offered this very, very talented in-state wide receiver, Xavier Aquafloozy.
By the way, who was the dude that you and Steely played for? Was that the dumbass clip of the week?
No, that was Steely's newest feature. That's the YouTube Yahoo of the week. I have no idea who that was.
That kid sounded like he was 10.
I know. That was something Steely dug up. Steely spends a lot of time on YouTube.
He does.
Between the hours of 9 and 11 a.m. He digs a lot of crazy stuff up.
I know.
Only about half of it ever sees the air.
Which is probably best for everybody involved.
But as we go back to these Oklahoma rankings in the class of 26, you got Taj Overton, you got Mason James. And once Caden Jones comes off the board, they're going to be the top 2 players in the state of Oklahoma and also the only 2 of the top 5 that are uncommitted. Now, Mason James, I guess, told Chad Simmons of On3 over the weekend that a decision could be coming sooner than he expected, which you can try you can try to imply some wordplay there. I don't necessarily think that's what Mason James was trying to get at, but we've known who's in the mix, right? You got Notre Dame. He's actually visiting Notre Dame this weekend. He went up to Washington recently. Michigan for a long time has been a school that's been very heavily recruiting Mason James. But Oklahoma's in good, solid shape there, and they have been for a long, long time. They're in great shape with Taj Overton as well, have been for a long, long time. Outside of that, though, man, I always do think it's cool when you have a class like this with this many FBS prospects. I think we're up to like 41 players in the state of Oklahoma in the 2026 class that have at least one FBS offer. It's really cool to see some diversity scrolling through this list and see how many out-of-state programs have pulled the trigger on guys within state lines here and given them the opportunity to go play Power 4 ball. You know, you got Cord Nolan committed to Texas Tech. They've had a pretty regular presence in the state of Oklahoma, as has Arkansas. They have Adam Austin and Colton Yarbrough committed. Austin, of course, 3-star safety from Lawton Mack. Yarbrough's the 4-star defensive end from Durant, Oklahoma. And as it stands, you know, again, you get Jaden O'Neal reclassified into the state, then that will give Oklahoma, presuming that they can close out the recruitments of Overton and James, the top 3 players within state lines. The other guys in the state that have an offer outside of Caden Jones, who, again, probably going Oklahoma State later today, are only 2 others. Dejon Ackerson at Putnam City and Braden Presley.
I'm surprised that Oklahoma didn't make more of a push for Dejon Ackerson from Putnam City.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. What is Oklahoma standing? This is what I meant to say. Sorry. What is Oklahoma standing with Ackerson? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I like Ackerson a lot.
Yeah. I like him too. He's an excellent player and a guy that, you know, you could foresee him having a role at Oklahoma as a cheetah or as an inside linebacker, just depending upon how he develops. And his recruitment has been interesting because he visited Oklahoma at the end of January, and OU is actively recruiting him. It's not like, you know, the rug pull that they kind of did with Dakota Terrell. You remember Dakota Terrell, big old 6'9" tight end from Pensacola last year?
Yeah.
Wound up at Mizzou. Oklahoma offered him and then, like, never called him again. So it's not that type of a situation. It's not that type of a situation. And the whole Dakota Terrell thing, as I understand it, that there was some disagreement on staff as to whether he was actually worthy of an offer. One of the coaches informed him that he had an offer, and then they got together and they made the decision that, we're not going to pursue this kid. So that was the nature of that whole ordeal. But as I understand, this is a very legit offer that Oklahoma has put out to Dejon Ackerson. They've been recruiting him. They want to get him on board. But, if you pay attention to his social media activity, for one thing, and that doesn't always tell the whole story, but you see him giving a lot of love to schools like Oklahoma State and Kansas State. He's already booked an OV to Kansas State and a spring practice visit. So it makes you wonder. I think it's all too easy to conclude that, okay, blue chip kid or, high 3-star at the very least, like certifiable P4 kid in the state of Oklahoma gets an OU offer. He's OU's to lose. It's not always the case. And I think there's been a growing awareness of that reality in recent years. Now, you can't make excuses to some fans about that whole reality, because there are some that just feel like Oklahoma should get everybody that they offer in state. If they offer a guy, they should get that guy. And that's always how it will be to some people. But again, Oklahoma is not the only shiny jewel out there. And there are some kids, quite frankly, they didn't grow up dreaming of wearing the crimson and cream. Even if they grew up in the state of Oklahoma, they grew up watching college football. I'll give you a perfect example. Bixby, Oklahoma's own Caden Penny. You familiar with Caden Penny?
Yeah, the tackle.
Yeah, big two-way kid. Could play offensive line, could play defensive line at the next level. He's a class of 2027 kid. He'll be one of the top 3 players in the state.
Yeah, really good player.
When those rankings drop. Really good player. He grew up rooting for Oklahoma State. And when I asked him what his dream offer was, he said, man, I'd love to get an offer from Colorado. I guess he likes Deion Sanders.
That would be the presumption.
Yeah, but again, Oklahoma's in that recruitment. They're making a push for Caden Penny. They'd love to keep him not only within state lines, but they'd love to get him to Norman as opposed to Stillwater, which might be trickier than it would appear. But that's an example of a kid that, he's grown up in the Sooner State, but his desire hasn't necessarily always been to be a Sooner. And so this is why I encourage everybody, folks, subscribe at OUinsider.com. If you're really interested about the inner workings of the whole recruiting process on a very individual level with each of the kids that OU is pursuing, at OUinsider.com, we're going to keep you abreast of all of that and what every one of these kids is thinking throughout the process, who else is involved, who's a contender, who's a pretender. It's what we love to do, and we have thousands and thousands of members over there that greatly appreciate the coverage of OU recruiting. So if you want to know what actually goes on behind closed doors, behind the scenes, you want to know the conversations that these kids are having with the OU coaching staff, other coaching staffs across college football, OU Insider is the place to be. Shameless plug. The Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line is available to you throughout the show at 405-651-3439. We're overdue for a timeout here, so let's hit one. When we return to that point, Oklahoma had a couple of very highly coveted defensive targets on campus yesterday for visits to practice. The latest on those situations on the other side. Keep it here on The Ref, the home of Sooner fans.
Dusty Dvorak here. You're listening to The Ref, the home of Sooner fans.
Don't miss out on OKC's hottest entertainment at the Showplace Theater with acts like Boys to Men, April 18th. America, April 26th. Patti LaBelle, May 2nd. And Scotty McCreery, May 10th. Riverwind is OKC's favorite casino experience.
Ever wonder why someone would go to the ends of the earth and leap into the unknown? Maybe a better question is, What are you waiting for? Pacifico is brewed for those who follow their own path. That's living life anchors up.
What's up, Ref Army? It's Dusty Dvorak, and I'm back. I'm excited to be back with the Ref and cannot wait to help bring the home of Sooner fans the best Sooner coverage. Catch me every Tuesday and Wednesday during the 10 a.m. hour of The Plank Show as I cut it up with Plank and Josh about everything in the world of Sooner and college football. That's every Tuesday and Wednesday on The Plank Show, and there's only one place to hear it. The Ref, the home of Sooner fans. Download the KRF app today to listen from anywhere.
Do you like to stand out in a crowd while wearing the best in OU apparel? The Jimmy Austin Pro Shop carries the best brands you can wear to work or even dress up events. Lines such as Lululemon, Travis Mathew, FootJoy, Greg Norman, Grayson, or Turtleson with the OU and Jimmy Austin logo are sure to catch everyone's eye. You don't have to be a golfer to shop at Jimmy Austin. They also do corporate special orders for you and your company. Call them today, 405-325-6716, or visit theougolfclub.com for more information.
Hey, Sooner fans, we've got you covered. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
No, we don't get a break.
This is the home of Sooner fans.
The Ref Sports Radio Network.
What are you waiting for? If you're anything like me, that question keeps you up at night. So don't wait for someone else's green light. Do the things you love right now at Moore Norman Tech. We'll get you out of the classroom and into the real world with hands-on experience in whatever feeds your fire. So get after it. Oklahoma needs more doers, and doers don't wait. Moore Norman Tech, powered by Oklahoma Career Tech.
This is Peggy Doviak, and I opened DM Wealth Management because of a horrible experience that my mother had with a stockbroker. I wanted to give people an alternative, a place they could go to understand their money, to know why investment decisions were made the way they were, and to create a financial plan that would help them meet their goals. Most of all, I wanted to help them plan their prosperity. Call me at 405-329-8884 or dmwealth.com.
Hi, Josh Helmer here from my friends at Auto Image USA in Norman, where they have everything you need to upgrade your ride. At Auto Image USA, they have so many services for you like paint correction, window tint, paint protection film, or maybe you want that boat, RV, or car looking brand new in the interior again with the top-of-the-line detailing. Plus, you can get their Enviro Shield paint and interior fabric protection backed by their 3 or 5-year warranty. Call them today, 405-321-4444. They are the best. Check them out.
You say you never give in to a meltdown and never fill your feed with kid photos. You say you'd never put a pacifier in your mouth to clean it and never let them run wild through the grocery store. So when you say you'd never let them get into a car without you there, no, it can happen. 1 in 4 hot car deaths happen when a kid gets into an unlocked car and can't get out. Never happens. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Interesting text on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line at 405-651-3439. This one came our way via a listener from here in the 405 who said, I've watched a lot of running backs high school film, and unless they're a true outlier, it's hard for me to tell how they're going to translate to college. And honestly, a lot of the 4-star prospects seem very interchangeable. Is a guy like Jones someone you worry too much about losing, besides the fact he's a legacy? Not in any way saying he isn't extremely talented. And this goes back to a conversation, Grayson, that you and I had last week about Jim Nagy's whole philosophy, the NFL's overarching philosophy about the running back position. Running back is no longer a high-value position at the NFL level, at least not right now. Maybe there will be a bit of a pendulum swing back in that direction because of the seasons that Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry had after signing free agent deals that were, let's face it, by elite player standards, cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But you're exactly right with that text in that there are a lot of blue-chip running backs, a lot of them, that wind up just being guys at the next level. Not busts by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly not true difference makers in a collegiate offense. To me, I can recall back during calendar year 2021 when Oklahoma was pursuing Javonte Barnes, watching his high school tape and being absolutely convinced this dude, as long as he doesn't get derailed by injury, is going to be an absolute freaking superstar at Oklahoma. He gets to town as a true freshman, rises to number 2 on the depth chart by week 1 of the season, and winds up being the primary handcuff to Eric Gray. And it felt like Javonte Barnes was on that steep upward trajectory. But then what happened? He gets derailed by injuries. And so, I was just having a text conversation in the break with a listener via the super secret Textoso line regarding the running back room. And it's really, really hard to look at that room right now and feel great about any of those guys being the type of true RB1 that like a Kennedy Brooks or an Eric Gray was back in the day. Because they all have their own, well, asterisks, if you will. Like there's talent there, certainly. There's production. There has been production there in most of their cases, but they all come with an asterisk. For Barnes, it's the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
For Xavier Robinson, it's the inexperience. He looked great. He looked great last year in the Missouri and Alabama games. But that's really all we've seen of him, right? Taylor Tatum, ball security. Gavin Sawchuk. Well, you're going to get the 2023 version or the 2024 version? You have no way of knowing. So, like, everybody in this running back room right now, Sam Franklin, like, and that's the other guy where you wonder, like, is he going to be able to provide any value? Is he capable of that? And if so, why didn't we see it last year when he had a ton more experience than a lot of the other backs that he was going toe-to-toe with for carries? And so with regard to the whole Caden Jones conversation and Oklahoma's philosophy surrounding the running back position, I think there's a lot of truth in that texter's point that, maybe you don't worry too much about losing him if you're not 100% convinced that he's going to be a legit difference maker at the next level. But then the other side of that coin, Grayson, is where are you going to find a true difference maker? Do you have one on the roster right now? And if the answer is no, but kind of, like you have a guy that you think will be a difference maker, even if he hasn't yet, can you get him to take that next step? Can you get Taylor Tatum to stop fumbling? You can get Taylor Tatum to stop fumbling. There's your difference maker. Mm-hmm. No question about it. If you get the 2023 version of Gavin Sawchuk, you manage to erase whatever demons were living in his head last season, there's your difference maker. If Javonte Barnes is intentional and measured with his rehab process and gets the right guidance from the training staff, and he's back to a legit 100% week 1 of the 2025 season, there's a difference maker. But that's a lot of ifs.
Running back from high school to college transition, I think, along with quarterback, is the hardest to project. Because the way running backs dominate in high school is that you're the shiftiest, most athletic guy on the field.
Yep.
Regardless of your size. And I bring up the size because Caden Jones, the catalyst of this conversation, according to 24/7 Sports, is 5'10", 175. Now, I think on Jink's roster when I got it, before I called one of their games, he was about 180, 185. So let's just say he goes into college at 185. He's 5'10", 5'11". That's not overwhelming size at the collegiate level. And sometimes that shiftiness doesn't narrow the plane, doesn't negate that fact in college. It just doesn't, because guys are bigger, faster, stronger, whatever. We know that. So, not to mention the fact that running back is also such a dependent position. You've got to have a solid offensive line in front of you. You probably, like we talked about yesterday, need to have some threat of a vertical passing game. Otherwise, teams can commit 8 players to the box. And that's going to make your life even more difficult unless you're Derrick Henry. So the fact that all of those variables, some that have to do with the player himself and some that don't, make this so hard to project. And when it comes to a guy like a high schooler who does not have imposing size at the collegiate level, I think you are absolutely correct when you say, look, some of these guys, 3 borderline 4 stars, are interchangeable. You're absolutely right. Some of them pop off. Some of them do big things. I hate to bring up another Oklahoma State example, but bear with me. Ollie Gordon is a perfect example of that. He was a guy who was a 3-star, won a Doak Walker. Caden Jones, some have him as a 4. We don't know what he'll be. I think that is a real thought. And I do think, to that texter's point also, the last sentence, I do think that the disappointment in Caden Jones not coming to Oklahoma is heightened because he's a legacy. I think that is true. And I think for us, too, sometimes we've had a little bit of difficulty divorcing the two, player and the fact that he's a legacy. So I think that's one of the most accurate texts I've seen in a minute. Well done.
Let me sum this up as succinctly as I can. Jim Nagy is not going to try to go out and buy sophomore year Ollie Gordon or junior year Ollie Gordon. That's not going to be Oklahoma's strategy. They're not going to go pay top dollar for running, or like they're not going to go out there on the recruiting trail and try and buy a Jonathan Hatton, for instance, a guy that they just let walk to A&M over the weekend because, well, they didn't want to pay big money. And A&M was okay with it, and that's fine. What Jim Nagy's going to try to do, what Oklahoma's going to try to do, is they're going to try to identify and develop an Ashton Genty, who went to Boise State as a 3-star prospect in the class of 2022, who didn't even start for his high school team at running back until his senior year. That's going to be Jim Nagy's path. That's going to be what he tries to accomplish with the Oklahoma front office. Let's go find a guy that's going to play high-level ball as a collegiate player that the rest of the country is sleeping on right now. Because Ashton Genty, he may have had a P4 offer from Kansas, and of course we're talking putrid Kansas back in those days,
right?
Not the Kansas of today.
Right.
I think that was it. I think that might have been his only P4 offer. Chris from Knoxville, which, by the way, before we get to Chris in Knoxville's text, 2 hilarious texts back-to-back. Kyle from Salisaw says, I appreciate you guys getting me through my workday. Haven't been able to listen the last couple of weeks, but just talking ball keeps me grounded this time of year. Keep being great, guys. Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate you tuning in every day. And then right on the back end of it, we get this 4 or 5 listeners that, could we please get off the Okie State talk? Puke. I'm going to stop listening. Wow.
I got nothing.
This is your fault. I'm pinning this on you.
You were the one that started this whole thing.
I know. Chris from Knoxville said, gun to your head, at this very moment, the leading rusher for OU in 2025 will be your answer?
Shoot. I think there's as great of a chance as any that it's John Mateer, to be quite frank with you.
See, that's like, yeah. That's an answer that a lot of people will overlook, but is very, very likely.
If I want to live into the year 2026, I would bet it. I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to bet it on Xavier Robinson.
Yeah. Well, and look, I've said it before. I'll say it again. At least one, probably 2 of these running backs that are on the roster right now will not be on the roster come the fall. Do the math in your own head. But to me, and this may seem like going out on a limb a little bit, but I guess you're kind of going out on a limb regardless of who you pick with this running back room because of everything we just talked about surrounding the uncertainties that come with each of those guys as individuals. Man, I'm counting on Javonte Barnes. I'm counting on Javonte Barnes to get healthy and be that dude again. Because, man, I'll tell you this much. He's not practicing right now, but he looks awesome. That looks like a grown man. Out there on the practice field, he's just doing rehab exercises, all that type of stuff. He is absolutely yoked. Man, he has put on so much good muscle. He's chiseled. And I tend to believe that with his combination of size and explosiveness, which has been limited the last couple of years because of the injury, man, I think if he's 100%, he can do something special for Oklahoma in 2025. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm counting on. All right, folks, that does it for us here on Locked In. You know where to find us every weekday. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place here on The Ref. Don't go anywhere. Tyler and Travis got you for the next 3 hours here on The Rush.